recommendations are moved, myself and the Mayor. And then I will speak first, then we will move to the speaking turns of the people who are doing amendments. First one will be Councillor Simpson and Baker, who gave their amendment yesterday to me, and then there is Councillor Fletcher, who has an amendment after that, and then we will go back to general debate. So you have Councillor Fletcher's amendments on the table, and then there is a slight amendment which will be put up, but we'll put it up at the time. We'll send the Mayor's one around. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor's one.
I haven't got the Mayor's one.
Right. We will get... Okay, I'm happy to kick off. I'll press my own time. I'm not going to go through the MDRS and Plan Change 78 into huge details. But on January 27, 2023, we had probably one of the most significant natural disasters the city has ever seen. We know that many of our communities were flooded. We knew there was over 10,000 slips across the city. I think it's about around 10,000 properties were affected too. We saw our streets and neighbourhoods turn into rivers. We saw significant damage. I've walked into people's properties where the water level was well above the door frames. There were examples of older people being pushed out of retirement villages in wheelie bins to get them to safety. In my ward alone, there was 69 people that the Surf Lifesaving volunteers saved. We had a significant number of deaths. We had damage to our council property, to our community facilities, and the list goes on. So 6 days after the floods, we had an extraordinary item come to this committee, I think it was February the 2nd or 3rd, to ask for urgent changes to our plans, ask for a written letter to go to ministers to halt or delay Plan Change 78, and to strengthen our qualifying matters and downzone for hazards. We are now 971 days post the floods. So at 6 days post the floods, it was urgent to get something done. And sadly, we're now 971 days since that time, and our community have been asking and asking and asking. I've stood in front of many public meetings where the community are totally bewildered that we are still building, in my opinion, inappropriate developments in floodplains and in hazardous areas. We wrote to the new government again to require them to either delay or give us the powers to downzone. That still didn't happen. We wrote to them again this year. They finally agreed. Minister Bishop finally understood our predicament on the light rail corridor, on the fact this council wanted to remove the MDRS, and the fact we wanted a downzone for hazards. We hoped, and we said in our letters, that we need this by sort of March, April, May, June, if possible, to get the consultation we needed done with our communities. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. The legislation changed in August, but we are where we are. I do want to talk about what Member Hennaday and others have spoken about. This is not just about upzoning. Yes, we are seeing significant upzoning that will be difficult, and it will look over the next 30 or 40 years like quite a lot of change in some of our communities. But as AT have presented to us, as Watercare presented to us, as our staff have said, the replacement puts housing and capacity where the infrastructure is. where our transport infrastructure is, where the jobs are, where we have already got open space and we will get more. But what I will say is we have more protections for our special character areas outside of those walkable catchments. Epsom, Herne Bay, Ponsonby, Grey Lynn, Hill Park in Manurewa, Devonport, Northcote Point, these areas will have far more protection than they did under the MDRS. The MDRS being the base zone meant that independent commissioners would have to compare. Is it more important to have 3x3 or is it more important to have the special character? Under this plan, that requirement no longer exists. There is significant downzoning across our city, so around our coastlines, around reserves, around the areas of flooding. There's significant downzoning in Half Moon Bay, Bucklands Beach, Eastern Beach, Cockle Bay, Mellons Bay, Shelley Park, East Tamaki. Almost all of Flatbush goes from 3-storey MDRS to 2-storey MHS. The same goes for the gardens in Manurewa. Huge suburbs in Papakura that are not near the train station go to 2 stories. Same with Hingaia. Pukekohe goes almost completely back to 2 stories and single house without the MDRS divisions. There's Goodwin Heights, Clover Park. Mangere Bridge goes back to 2 stories. There's homes near the Maunga are completely downzoned with no MDRS. Mount Roskill, Green Bay, Linfield, Blockhouse Bay all have significant downzoning in those areas. The downzoning around our coast and reserves are significant. There's sensible downzoning in areas that Councillor Turner talked about. Downzoning in Glen Eden, significant. There's significant downzoning around the foothills of the Waitakere Ranges. There is massive pressure taken off Henderson Valley, Henderson, Te Aratu Peninsula, Rānui, where downzoning takes place because we're removing the MDRS and because we're thinking about flooding. The same goes with Swanson, with Massey. There's the treatment continues to West Harbour, Hobsonville, near the coast in Greenhithe. Much of that is heading back to single house or 2 stories. Places like Castor Bay, Browns Bay, Tor Bay and Murray's Bay have significant downzoning. Like I think we'll probably get submissions saying it's too much. Gulf Harbour goes completely from MDRS down to 2-storey MHS, completely, and single house zoning. There's downzoning around Long Bay. All of Long Bay currently under the Plan Change 78 is MDRS. This goes back to single house and it goes back to MHS. This is significant for our city. This takes away all the upzoned areas and the frustrations that we're hearing from communities without good infrastructure, and it puts it where it should be. We have not touched the Maunga view shafts, despite many speeches from the minister saying we should, but we thought it was important to keep those Maunga view shafts. The evidence in here says we've strengthened our controls around Māori significant sites. We keep all our heritage completely. I could go on and on about this, but I want us to be sure the government has given us an opportunity to be the only council, probably, to remove the MDRS. The MDRS puts housing everywhere, and it's permitted. What this new plan does, is it perfect? Absolutely not. It's not perfect. But many would argue the unitary plan wasn't perfect. Many would argue the special housing areas put in by the previous national government were not perfect. But we are where we are. And this actually gives us the future where we accept that more people will live along our bus stations, live along our train stations, live along our metro centres. That is what this plan does. We do not get to decide to reduce that 2 million. We do not get to decide to not do anything. We do not get to decide to remove both plans and thumb our nose at the government. Because guess what? They have the pen to the next RMA, which, if you remember a couple meetings ago, we put some strong opposition to a lot of the requirements in there. Standardised zoning, standardised catchment, walkable catchments, removing the rural-urban boundary, more green fields without infrastructure. All of those things are coming. So I think that this is our chance to show, A, we can show leadership. We can be clear to our communities today that we no longer want them to wait 972, 3, 4. We don't want to wait thousands of days to downzone our communities to stop inappropriate development in floodplains. So I know there are plans potentially to delay things longer, but actually our community is demanding us to make a decision, show leadership, and choose one of the 2 plans the government has led us. The government did not have to let us do this. The government did not have to let us remove the MDRS. The government could have let us take many years to do this, and they have given us this opportunity today. And I hope that we can be sensible about the future, allow young people in the city to feel like they can have a house, can have an apartment as their first house, or maybe before they have kids. So in the future, they might move to a different suburb and a house. They might not choose to do that. Myself, the mayor, and others were there in Carrington the other day with the Auckland developments. There was 3-bedroom apartments there, pretty close to the city, for $800,000 or $900,000. That is significantly lower than any house you will buy in the same areas. In the community I live, Northcote, we significantly upzoned that many years ago. The infrastructure has followed, and we have now got people moving into apartments and terrace houses in Northcote, very close to the city, for $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. Do you think that opportunity is there for my son, who's 3 years old, if we don't look to do stuff differently? This is not perfect. I'm not backing everything the minister wants us to do. I'm not backing the fact we had to do Plan Change 78. But we are stuck with the decision today of choosing one, and I will choose the one that our infrastructure providers and our communities say is doing the things that they've been asking us to do for a very long time. Thank you. Right. We're going to go to the amendments, and then we'll come back to speaking. So we've got the first amendment from Deputy Mayor and Councillor Baker. Also, the Mayor is supporting this one, but because he's seconding the overall motion, Councillor Baker will second it. The new system is slightly frozen.
Like the cheese ad, good things take time. Well, maybe I'll just speak to it way. Here we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to put this amendment up. And the Mayor will speak to more of the detail around it, but I'm going to give you the simple version of why I think this is a good idea. If you look at your report on point 3, we have to, by government legislation, enable building heights of at least 15 stories for some apartments around the CRL and walkable catchments. What this amendment is suggesting is that they shouldn't be vertical straight up. We're asking for a bit of a setback so you can have public amenity a few stories up for things like basketball courts, things like barbecue areas, a little gardens, some public, community amenity for the high towers. And it just stops us going from and I don't like the term, but I just can't think of a better one off the top of my head, a cold it's like straight up, to having a little bit more, you've got to say this in a better way, aren't you? A little bit more open space or community facilities within the building. We see it a lot overseas. I see it especially, I've seen it a lot when I've been in Japan, and they use it a lot for sport. But I think even more in the carbon environment where we're looking for community gardens, things like that, it would be good. And it's supported by staff. I'll head now, if I can, Chair, to the Mayor to back up with the more technical side of it, but that's a simple version. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Brown.
That's a technical amendment, but basically it means in the walkable catchments within the terrace house and apartment building zone, we have the choice of counting it and with a rule of called floor area ratio or height in relationship to boundary. Height in relationship to boundaries has setbacks so that it removes the risk of everyone being in shadow. If you have the floor area ratio, you get more buildings and more apartments in. But they're kind of like Russian things where there's vertical and there's a gap in vertical, and you wouldn't want to be near those. This is the best chance of achieving things that people actually want to buy. It means we're going to achieve the maximum heights on sites and bake in as much quality as we can. It's very normal on an apartment building, I've built some, to use as much of the site at the bottom levels for car parking and for commercial spaces, shops and restaurants. Then you step in a bit before the tower goes up so that you don't cast shadows on everybody. And on that step in bit there is where you find the swimming pools It's where you find the tennis courts. It's where you find the landscaping. It's what appeals to get people into tall buildings. The floor area ratio squeezes a bit more capacity in, but if you want these things to sell, you've got to have parking and commercial uses in the lower levels. It's a better income for the people who live in tall buildings and much better for the people who live close by them. We've listened, quality design shouldn't be traded off for capacity targets, which I'm told the model is we can meet anyhow. So they'll just give better height to boundary conditions. So particularly if you're next to the other zones, they're not so hard to keep up with. So it's just a sensible way of getting that maximum thing in without actually pissing everybody off.
More sunlight.
Yeah, that's it. No shadow.
Now, and I don't have to speak to the seconder because the mayor's the seconder, but before I get Councillor Baker and Ferry to speak to this, I'm happy to incorporate this into the main set of resolutions. Mainly, and I'll just briefly confirm, this was presented to us. We didn't actually get time to present the second option, and I think it's important that it will slightly reduce our capacity, but it stays over the 2 million, but I think it is very clear that this includes conditions like height to boundary, and I think it would be unfair for us to put the new version in without a lot of time. So happy to incorporate it if that's okay with the seconder, who's the mayor. Yep. So because of that, it means we go back to now we go to the. Do you have a question, Councillor Darby? Yeah.
Thanks. Look, I don't have any doubt that the mover and seconder have checked this with staff, but I just want to make sure the staff have moved away from the table, but I didn't see this circulated earlier. I saw something circulated from Councillor Fletcher and your own recommendations. So I just want to check. The emphasis is on the height in relation to boundary controls, but it does mention the package of planning controls. So I need to ask the staff, to tell us succinctly what's in that package of planning controls. So because we need to be careful here that we're actually not signing up for something which is actually maybe a bit more than what we thought and should be consulted on through the process that's ahead.
Could we get a staff member just to, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Darby. Through the chair, just wondering if we can bring up the presentation that Megan ran through earlier. Today's presentation from earlier today, and we do have a couple of slides at the end.
I don't need to go over all that again.
Yep.
But
Broadly speaking,
my question is, the emphasis is on the height in relation to boundary. I know about the podiums and the good design of that. But is there anything in the package of planning controls that should actually be perused through the statutory process that's ahead of us as opposed to now?
Maybe just speak to it if Councillor Darby doesn't need the...
So just to come back to that question. So there are two options for the 10 and the 15-storey terrace and apartment building zone, as the Mayor has discussed as well. In the August draft, the package included some stronger setbacks from neighbouring boundaries. So to really get the 10 and the 15 stories, you probably need to amalgamate 2 or 3 properties, because it was really at the upper levels beyond 5 or 6 stories, pushing the buildings further back from the boundary. In the version attached to your agenda, between August and now, the team have looked to try and address a number of issues, in particular to see if it might be possible to allow the 10 and the 15 stories on smaller sites and therefore get some credit for that through the capacity modelling that might assist in achieving the 2 million, or slightly over 2 million. But with that alternative approach that's in the September version on your agenda, it does allow, as the Mayor described, taller buildings, close together, more shadowing, more dramatic sort of change in neighbourhoods than sticking with your August draft, which had a package including the height to boundary of about a 5 stories and then a sort of 60 degree, I think it is, setback, pushing the 6 story and beyond further away, forcing that amalgamation of sites. It also has, the August version, more generous outlook controls from bedrooms, living space, and so on. Those are the two probably broad changes, aren't they? The main ones is really the greater outlook from windows under the August version, as per the amendment, and greater setbacks from neighbours. That's the package. There are many other controls, as you'll be well aware, within the FAB zone and the other zones around ground floor outdoor living space, some of the other key controls, landscaping, setbacks from front boundary and so on, but really to probably run through them. Overall coverage control is consistent. That's probably a key one between the August version and the one attached to your agenda. Is the coverage control is the same, 50% maximum building coverage. The key difference is how you sort of build up from that 50%. So, and it will absolutely be, I think this is maybe to your next question, the subject of submissions. I think anything to do with this plan change will obviously generate a lot of submissions if it goes through, but the 10 and the 15 story areas and probably the 6 story areas as well, and those package of controls will be tested through submissions, expert evidence. Council will have a chance to re-look at things off the back of submissions, as we do for all aspects of these sorts of plan changes, so it's not the final opportunity to get this absolutely correct. But we think both packages are pretty good. But yeah, there is a question as to if the council isn't enabling the 10 or 15 stores on every single site, as per the August draft, then that may require a qualifying justification, which we believe there is a good qualifying reason to stick with the August version. Whereas the September version is as I mentioned, allowing the 10 and the 15 stories even on very small 500-600 square metre sites, which in reality is unlikely to occur. So hopefully that answers it.
Thank you. Right, so we will go back. You can debate this now, part of the substantive later, but now we will go to Councillor Fletcher's amendment.
Thank you, Chair. I hope everyone has a hard copy in front of them of this amendment, and you'll see in many ways it reflects the intention of what the Chair has already put up in terms of the withdrawal from Plan Change 78, and I think the impassioned speech from the Chair is one that we all share, for those of us who have experienced the trauma in Auckland over recent years. However, what I'm at pains to do is ensure that the mistakes we made with not pushing back hard enough on Plan Change 78 are repeated. And I think there has been some misunderstanding about what Council's absolute requirements are around the notification issue. So we can withdraw, and I was at pains to try and make it clear with the questions. We can withdraw Plan Change 78 today, but we are not required to identify all of the detail of the full plan change today. So in order that we can meet our obligations, we can take and request that we have a little more time. There's still so much that is unknown. In terms of the modelling that we've had around capacity, we still don't know all of the detail that the Centre City Master Plan is actually going to be able to accommodate. And that's why I'm suggesting that we delegate some authority to the CEO, that he can actually oversee some additional work, that there can be some further consultation and community engagement, pick up any errors. I think we owe it to the public to try and get this right. And I detect from those who have contacted me from Parliament that there is the desire to actually have this workable, and that there be some good communication. We've got that opportunity in terms of common sense. It is a desperate shame that this is occurring at the same time as we're trying to do a local government election. But we have an obligation to the people of Auckland to try and get this corrected. I'm not trying to change in this the yield that we're looking for, or the minister's looking for. It's simply to meet our requirements under his directives, but allow ourselves a little bit more time, some further communication, and that we then go to the public with the plan with a little more certainty about its workability. So I think it speaks for itself. I think it's unfortunate that we have had this imposed upon us. Auckland does need to grow, and certainly I support growth, and I certainly would prefer that it be done in terms of the more compact city approach, and that's all included in this amendment, but it's just giving ourselves a little more time and hopefully being able to resolve any of the outstanding issues that we've heard by way of questions today. And I really implore you to give consideration to this, because I think it is the right outcome for Auckland. Thank you.
So speaking to the amendment, councillor. Oh. Okay, sorry, we'll go to questions of the mover, I think. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, thank you. Can I just ask a couple of questions? I noticed that you asked for a further 3 months for consultation. If we notify in October, does that, to the Chief Executive, does that break our consultation
Sorry,
period?
I didn't quite hear.
So I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be asking a question to. Whether
Of the mover for now, and then.
Oh, okay. The 3 extra months that you want for further consultation, would that be November, December, January?
The reason that I put 3 months in there was that I'm very mindful that it's potentially over the Christmas period. And so I was trying to avoid the pressure, and also because council will not be sworn in. I can't remember the date that the new council will be sworn in. So it was to try and give effect to the time requirements of that, but to be able to give the comfort to the minister that we are really taking this seriously. We are trying to respond favourably, but there are some uncertainties, and it would just allow us to actually have a little bit more time on that.
So I suppose to the Chief Executive, if I may, if we consult November, December, January, are we breaking our rules that we're not supposed to consult over that time frame?
I think, Deputy Mayor, you're talking to council's own custom and practice in terms of consultation processes, correct? Yes, but of course those are self-imposed. That's self-imposed guidance. There's nothing that kind of regulates that beyond your ability to decide what's wise. I mean, generally speaking, I'd have to advise you against consultations that run through the Christmas, New Year, early January period for obvious reasons.
I mean, I do get the point that we're missing a step that we haven't had, so I understand where council is coming from. My next question is, if we take 3 extra months, does that shorten the time that Aucklanders have to have their say?
So
Noting that the 18-month period is the period that we've been given, does that shorten it?
So the minister, I spoke to the minister this morning, I think the mayor has too, that whatever we take at the beginning will not be extended. So we would shorten our hearings and shorten time for decisions. So, yeah.
You
I
asked,
mean,
you asked your question, I'll ask mine, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay,
On that, may I respond? You may recall that it was at the last policy and planning meeting that we had discussing this matter that I was the one that was attempting to identify what the process was going to be. And at the time I called for submissions and further submissions and so forth in hearings. And we didn't get satisfaction on the day, and they've come back. My understanding is from talking to some of the Auckland-based MPs that there is definitely a desire to try and work our way through this in a way that can bring parties together. And why I asked the question whether or not the Minister was going to be online today was to ask these very questions. Now, it would appear that the Mayor and the Chair, Councillor Hills, might have spoken to the Minister today, but I think we're all entitled to speak to the Minister on this one, and I think it can be one of those points of negotiation and discussion once we actually make the decision to withdraw on Plan Change 78.
okay, so I'm going to ask the Mayor and the Chair, because I think what I'm hearing is legally we don't have to, but if we don't, what will the Minister do? And if you've had that conversation, both of you, I'd like to know what the answer to that question is, please.
Okay, basically, I'm not in favour of this amendment, as you may well have gathered, but it's not adding time, it's taking time away. We've got till the 18 months to get this thing to the final thing there. I want to get on with it now so that there is sufficient time for the public to raise questions. And it reduces the time for public input from people like the people at St Mary's Bay who don't specifically like bits of it. You're just taking that time away from them, and I think that's completely wrong. The Minister has made it quite clear, if we don't make a decision today, he will. And so I've been against Wellington having more input and things, not for it. And so just kicking down the can down the road because you feel that you don't want to make a decision now is not serving in the interests of Auckland. It's just dithering. We want to give the people the time for a proper hearings process, and on the 2nd of February 2023 we voted to commission work to do everything we possibly could to look out for our planning following the flood settings, which MDRS wouldn't help. 6 days after the weekend floods, myself and councillors moved and seconded that, and we've got on with this. We requested straight after that a chance to delay Plan Change 78 so we could get on with managing. And dithering another 3 months is just another 3 months for some people to build houses in the wrong place. So make a decision now, today, and we will also give the most time for the people to raise those questions about little bits that may be wrong. The overall thing is to do intensification sensible places down the transport. We might have got a bit wrong on some other little bits here and there. That's what we want to give the public a chance to have that opportunity to say those things. You're just stealing that off them in order to dither around. It's quite clear what the Minister said. If we don't make the decision, he will.
So point of order, Mr. Chair. Are we in questions or in speeches?
Well, there's not really standing orders for questioning, but we can continue to ask questions, or we can just move to debate on the item. But that
was a question. There was answer to a question.
There was a So
what did the Minister say today? I gave you what he told me.
Thank you. Right. Any other questions? Okay. Sorry.
I'm still quite unsure because I'm really concerned about it now. I thought that this would not take time out of the period, that this would be an addition to that. Megan, you're telling us that he is... I mean, there's a different answer you're giving. Either we make a decision or he will. We are going to make a decision today, there's no question of it. But is he saying if we made a decision that put a bit more time frame for this to be done, then he'll just take it off the public submission time?
So the announcement from the Minister was that 18 months' time we will have that.
But he has said that he'll take it off.
So there's the 18 months. So we did it around here. That's the amount of time left for the people of St Mary's Bay.
This could not be done in addition.
Doesn't go on 18 months. It doesn't go past 18 months.
Both Karina, it's both legal and Councillor Williamson, both legal and Megan, several times said we need to provide a plan and show everything in it to withdraw. And then we've already been told that the minister is wanting it 18 months from the 3rd of November or whatever date. So we have the date is clear. We pushed to not have the notification date. The original legislation said notification October 10, and we said there's no way we could do that. And they said make a decision to notify and withdraw. So you can't do parts of one decision. Anyway, we're getting question. That was what we've had today. So we have one more question from Councillor Ferry, and I think it's best we debate the amendment.
Alright, thank you. So I have two questions. One is, I guess I've felt like this, while there are legal issues here, this is actually in its heart a political process, and I'm interested in the movers' understanding of our power to actually negotiate and discuss this further with the minister when the changes to the RMA amendments give him quite an unprecedented amount of power. I don't like that, but that is the situation we're in terms of calling the shots around this. So how do you anticipate that negotiation or discussion with the minister going, particularly given what we've just heard from people who have talked to the minister about this today, which to my mind indicates not a lot of flexibility at his end? And then I have one other question, please, which might be a question for staff, sorry.
I think what you need to keep in the back of your mind is the political judgment that we must all exercise on the basis of all of the information we've received. As I said earlier, I think there has been some fundamental misunderstanding about the actual power that we have in this situation. I was not and am not persuaded that this is going to cut off the amount of time that it will give us for the process. But what I have heard today is that good practice would suggest some consultation before notification, and I think this gives us an opportunity to give effect to that. And I have confidence in our CEO that this could be calmly managed. It's just unfortunate that we have the election falling smack bang in the middle of it. And I don't think it's actually drawing out the best outcomes for Auckland. This just gives that little bit of time, and I hope you can support this.
So can I just clarify then very specifically, what interaction have you had with the minister, who is the decision maker here, that gives you the impression that he's going to act as you think he's going to act?
I think we're getting into a process of Chinese whispers. So what I had asked and have consistently asked for the last 6 months is what formal communication has there been between this council, through the chair, through the mayor, and through the senior officers of council on those matters of pushback. And to what I have established is that there have been none. What we are hearing today is the hearsay from the chair of the committee and from Mayor Brown. It would have been helpful to have had some of this information in writing beforehand, but ultimately you are going to have to exercise your best judgment in the interests of Auckland.
Thank you. I think we'll go. We are very much debating now, so I'm going to go.
Sorry, I do have one technical question,
Okay.
which might be more for staff. So what would this mean for E36, those floodplain changes, which, as Phil said, would bite from notification, so would start to reduce the ability to develop in those floodplains? What would happen if this amendment goes through? Would they be delayed?
It would. Both this and MDRS provisions would be delayed at least another 6 months. But who knows what? This is not a. We don't know what the legal process is, so it could be longer than 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So could I please have anyone who'd like to debate the amendment?
I'm not sure I hold the same view as when I said I seconded it. And the length of time after.
Okay. Councillor Watson then.
Okay, what an extraordinary situation in light of what we heard from our director today, that pre-notification consultation is best practice, is good practice. I thought it would have been especially good practice when we're considering the extent of the changes that are proposed to Auckland for the next 30 years and beyond, and in light of the reservations our own staff have made very clear to us in this paper about challenges, which is a euphemistic way of really saying concerns in terms of the reduction in special character areas, the possibility of every site for the 10 to 50 stories resulting in poor design outcomes, the THAB zone, concerns about increased shading and dominance impacts, the ability to engage with Aucklanders prior to developing the draft replacement plan, which is what we're debating now, and the disconnect between infrastructure readiness. So we have a proposal of a huge scale, but with real concerns. I mean, the kindest thing you can say about, the PC 78 and the replacement plan changes, which is the least worst option. That's about as enthusiastic as you can get. As far as this specific amendment goes, though, by Councillor Fletcher, as it goes to further consultation, 3 months, I'm going to go by what the Minister said, not the kind of, he said passed on via multiple people, because he's quite clear. The Minister is very clear in his communication of 16th of September. That's about a week ago. I don't think it comes much more recent than that. So what does Mr Bishop say? First of all, he's a big fan of local voices at the centre of decisions on Auckland's growth. That would seem to me to indicate that he's keen to make sure Aucklanders have their fair say. Here's a quote. As I've said publicly many times, it is important that Aucklanders have robust opportunities, plural, to participate in this important process. So, if we are to take Mr Bishop at his word, he's in favour of a very robust process, Aucklanders having multiple opportunities, as you would expect in a change of this significance. So, the general tone of Mr Bishop's communication is one who wants a very thorough process. He wants Aucklanders involved, and we heard from our own director that such a process would inevitably involve a consultation with the public pre-notification. You can only assume that Mr Bishop would support that. As far as some of the other assertions go in respect of the 18 months, no, he hasn't said 18 months. He said around 18 months. There's a big difference. And 3 months isn't much of a difference. That's around 18 months. So he's put that in black and white. What he's also said is, I cannot make formal decisions on the process until I have received the formal notice from Auckland Council. So he hasn't decided on the exact process yet. This is an ideal time for us, if we're interested in making our pitch on behalf of Aucklanders, given the concerns that have been articulated, and given that a lot of people actually have no idea what's in store for them. They have no idea because it hasn't been very well publicised. And I guess if I was one of those people, because what's become very clear to me is that this is our plan change. This is Auckland Council's plan change. So if it's our plan change, I want to have some say in the process and the ability to engage with Aucklanders, because that's what people would expect. We see a phenomenal turnaround in the increase in density. So if we look at the current AUP, we essentially double mixed housing urban 3x3 and THAB. Double, it goes up to 70%. That becomes the predominant zoning in Auckland, and simultaneous to that we have the plummeting in the single house zone, which basically goes from 18 to 11%, and the mixed housing suburban zone just falls away to about a third of what it currently is. They're big changes for people. People have a right to get an understanding before a formal submission process. Formal submission processes aren't all that friendly to the public at large. We know that. And you know, arguably to do it properly, you need quite some significant financial resource. So I see nothing in Mr. Bishop's written words that would indicate that are at odds with Councillor Fletcher and Williamson's desire to have a pre-notification consultation that now allows these issues to be properly aired and does the right thing by all the Aucklanders that are out there and who will, in almost every case, be affected by this.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, I support Councillor Fletcher's amendment because I think it's a good faith attempt to try and rescue a very poor plan, a flawed plan, and a deeply flawed process. I mean, who dreamed up the idea of the council having to make this decision during the local government interregnum? Would the minister have dreamed up that idea? I don't know. We'll leave that question hanging. But obviously, rushing such a significant plan through in decent haste, given the significance of it, the scale of it, and the import of it, is just not acceptable. Where is our duty of care to the people of Auckland? Where are our obligations to the community under the Local Government Act? And in terms of RMA, where is our response to people and communities in Section 5, which is at the core of this Act? The Act, of course, is going to be repealed. We've been told by several governments that it's going to be repealed, but it hasn't yet. The governments themselves have been repealed. So it's still with us, and therefore we have a legal obligation to actually respect all of it, not just cherry-pick parts of it, to engineer an outcome that goes against the interests of the vast majority of Aucklanders. The rationale for what we are doing today keeps changing. A few years ago, Plan Change 78, we were told, we were advised, councillors should support, was an excellent plan, and it was going to help solve the housing affordability question, which of course it hasn't, and neither will this. In fact, to be fair, the NDRS actually, in terms of its scope, was more likely to result in affordable dwellings than the approach this plan is taking, which essentially is about intensification, and by that I mean high-rise, and in particular intensification and high-rise in very commercially desirable areas. That's not about affordability, that's about profits. And this is what is the problem with this plan. I'll illustrate, the Herald itself has pointed out, there is land available in Kingsland and around Mangawhau, which would be ideal for intensification. Of course it is. It's already been zoned for that, but it's been land banked. The Herald doesn't mention that, and that's a problem we're dealing with if we're sincere about affordability. I have to say that if we do not amend the process here, we're going to end up with a plan which will be very damaging for the people of Auckland. It will mean that some privileged people will be facilitated in profiting, but the amenity for thousands of Aucklanders will be damaged and their property rights downgraded. This amendment is an attempt to try and rectify a bad plan by putting in a more of a conventional process to do what we should have done all along, bring in the people of Auckland, pre-consult with them, which is best practice in terms of planning, issues and options, discuss it with the people of Auckland, hear what they are saying, not trying to log roll through a damaging set of proposals in a record time. It's just not acceptable, and if we don't take the advice of Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Williamson and persist with what the Chair wants to put through, that will damage not only the reputation of this council, it will also blow back on the hapless minister who's somehow been talked into going along with this, probably because of his own, I won't say that, his own self-belief, but it's a deeply flawed approach, and he would be wise to intervene himself to stop the council doing damage not only to the council and to the government, but most importantly, damage to the ratepayers of Auckland. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora. I want to turn first to a comment that Councillor Fletcher made in response to my question about whether she'd had any indication from the Minister. And that was the accusation that what we have heard from the Mayor and Councillor Hills today was hearsay. Now, hearsay implies that something is a rumour that may or may not be true. It has quite a strong negative implication. You're talking about a conversation here that the Mayor and Councillor Hills have had directly with the Minister. So I'm really concerned that you've basically accused them of lying about their conversation with the Minister, and I think that needs to be addressed at some point because that's a pretty serious allegation. The next thing I wanted to mention is that this amendment is actually quite messy. So what we're saying in B is that the Minister has to approve that further consultation and engagement. This is why I asked if there had been any discussion from the mover with the Minister about this that gave her any indication that he would say yes, because we have a strong indication from direct conversations that our Mayor has had with the Minister that he's not going to say yes. So what happens if we pass this and he says no? We have no further way forward on this. If we pass this and the Minister says no, as he's perfectly entitled to do under the B that is proposed, say he does say yes. I think that's unlikely. We've heard from two people who've had a direct conversation with him that he's likely to say no. But say he does say yes, and then we get to C. We are then delegating to staff. Not us deciding today, as we would be. We're delegating to staff to sign off on the final deal after any consultation. Not us. I don't like being disempowered in that way. I also, the point that we all, I don't think there's any disagreement that any of us around this table would rather not be doing this in an election campaign. I haven't heard anyone say that they're like, yeah, yay, I'm so glad we're doing this right now. I've also not heard anyone say they're happy about the time frame on this, whether it was happening, last year or this year, that we are having to do this so quickly. These are acknowledged truths, but they're also the reality that we are in. There's a huge risk if people support this amendment. Firstly, that the Minister says no, and then we have no way forward. Secondly, that he says yes, but there are caveats to that, such as the ones that we've heard directly, that he actually gives Aucklanders less time in the submissions and hearings process as a result. That's a highly likely outcome. So I cannot support this. And finally, I can't support it because it will delay the really important flood measures we need for E36. And we don't know when they would be able to apply. And I met with people in Sandringham on Friday night, and E36 is not perfect. We haven't got there yet, but any delay to that puts more people in risk of flooding. We could have another major storm any time we like. Well, we don't like. And it puts people at risk. So I can't support this, and I think it's messy and doesn't do what it says it wants to do.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I think we all just need to cut everybody a bit of slack here. I have great sympathy for where Councillor Fletcher is coming from. She's just concerned about the rush and she wants a little bit more time. If we had known of your amendment yesterday, Councillor Fletcher, I think we would all have got a little bit more certainty. But we didn't. We didn't know until this morning, which is why we've got the Mayor and the Chair talking to the Minister and you thinking this and somebody else thinking that. So I do have a huge amount of sympathy for you. And in a perfect world, we would all like a little bit more time, but we haven't got it. There are a couple of things that bother me. First of all, B, approve in principle. It is not replacing one plan with another. Now, I know legally that potentially that is the case, but we also know that the Minister, and I've spoken directly to the Mayor about this, the Minister says if you're going to remove one plan, you have to replace it with another. So in principle doesn't work. It's not an approval. I also share, with the greatest respect to the Chief Executive, that as a representative around this table for Auckland, the decision should finally sit with elected members and not with staff. So I greatly appreciate that the Chief Executive could do the extra work, but I think it's important for us to be more over that. The next thing that bothers me is it's a 3 months over the Christmas period, and that goes against, yes, I know it's self-imposed, but it is a very difficult time for people to have their say. So what's my outcome? My outcome is for the people of Auckland to know as soon as possible what a draft replacement plan would look like so they can have their say. I get questions all the time. What does it mean for my street, my suburb, and they don't know. They don't know the final, where we've got to today. So I want to get that out as soon as possible. I want to give Aucklanders as much time as possible to come back and start the consultation or the submission process. And that happens in an elongated, longer period of 7 weeks to the 19th of December. I also want to stop as fast as possible building in areas we know at high risk of floods. And this would slow that process down. So I'm sorry, Councillor Fletcher. I want to give Aucklanders as much time. I really do. I really do understand where you're coming from. And I think there's been a little bit miscommunication between where you wanted to go and where the Minister sits, what the Mayor and the Chair have been talking to the Minister about. I think if we'd all got a little bit ahead of ourselves, we could have solved this a bit quicker. But it has been a rush in lots of ways. I think your intention is honourable, but I think practically we are actually putting ourselves at risk that we might hand it to the Minister to have more powers than I think he should have, respectfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thanks. With respect, I won't be supporting the amendment either. And I agree with the Mayor's comments. I think that the Mayor really nailed it. I'm not happy about the time frame, but at the same time, I just can't accept an argument that there's any kind of rush job here. People are holding public meetings, literally holding public meetings. They're writing to their councillors, they're lobbying their councillors. There is a wide awareness in the city of what is happening today. Hey, thanks guys. So I'm not sure we've got people here that are very aware of what we're talking about. So I'm not sure extra time would make a difference to understanding in the community. People understand just fine. Proponents to the amendment also have a bit of a maths problem here. So firstly, as the Mayor covered, if it cuts into it, that's a huge problem. The Mayor talked about that. I don't need to add into that. But the Mayor has said, the Minister has said that he's not adding on extra time. So he's not adding on that extra 3 months. And thank goodness for that. Because a lot of you guys out there, we're all on the streets, we're talking to our constituents. My constituents are saying they want us to stop building in floodplains right now. We should have done this yesterday. So I am not allowing 3 more months for people to do it. We need to do it now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So there's no more speakers. I'll just quickly say to Councillor Fletcher, yes, it would have been Okay. Councillor Turner.
I just want to make the comment that I sit here listening to us talking about not building in floodplains, and then in the next breath we talk about engineering ourselves away from intolerable risk to life in houses in properties we've purchased after being flooded and put them back on the market. So again, it seems irrational to me. I will be supporting this amendment. I was undecided a few moments ago, but I'll be supporting this amendment because we need to take this steady. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, we're not, just to be clear, that the whole point of the buyout process is to reduce risk to life. If there is possibilities for a property, part of a property to be used again to make it safe, under these new rules, which will be strongest rules we've ever had, then that may happen. But that is not what we are doing, Councillor Turner. And to just this point, very briefly, yesterday we sat in chairs and the Mayor and Chairs meeting, Councillor Fletcher, I spoke about the item. No one brought it forward to myself or the Mayor that there would be an attempt to delay, and so I'm just not sure where we're heading. And this adds so much uncertainty because an in-principle decision is not a decision. I'm not even sure that we could take an in-principle decision to remove Plan Change 78 with the requirements we have to show the Minister to be allowed to remove Plan Change 78 will even exist. And there's no meetings of this council until November. And then we would also require the Chief Executive to somehow reform our plan post-consultation. It is a very bizarre process that would happen. The only thing we could do, because I did only have this morning, once I saw this amendment to our staff, the only thing the Chief Executive could do is find capacity elsewhere, and he would do it based on the policies we've already passed. So it would be disingenuous of us to go and say that there would be much change. The process is, as we wrote to the Minister, he came back to us and said between the 3rd of November, 19th of December, the public will have their say, then there will be hearings, local boards will be able to present to those hearings. We've got a clause going on the Chair's Recs that will allow us to make a submission on all the things that we think need changing or improving, and that is what we will do, and then that will be the Minister who decides all of that process. Anyway, all those in favour? By division?
Thank you. Through the Chair, members are voting on the amendment on your screen. Chair Hills.
No.
Hakura Member Ashby.
No.
Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bartley.
No.
Mayor Brown. No. Deputy Chair Dalton.
No.
Councillor Darby.
No.
Councillor Ferry.
Against.
Councillor Filipina.
Against.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes.
Councillor Foley.
Against.
Hakura Member Hanare. Councillor Henderson.
Against.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Leone.
No.
Councillor Newman.
Yes.
Councillor Sayers.
No.
Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Turner.
For.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
15-8 carried. Oh, lost, sorry.
15 votes to 8.
Speed bubble.
We like it. Yeah, it's good.
So you'll see by the new system, it's quite clear. Right, so there are no other amendments that I know about. So we'll go back to the substantive. Oh, sorry, and just to clarify from our conversations earlier, and I thought it was automatic that we had the ability to submit, but it is just, don't know if we've got it on screen, but there is an additional rec that I'm adding because I thought it was automatic. We got the right to, but what was the wording? Sorry.
Did that show 9:15?
8:15.
8:15.
8:15, yeah. Sorry. I'm just going to read it out. Sorry, apologies.
So we need
Apologies, everyone. We're just getting. It was a very non-sexy addition. Here it goes. Delegate authority to the Chief Executive to approve a council submission on Plan Change 120 that does not include policy shifts but includes and is not limited to addressing any errors, anomalies that are identified following notification. So that is a process we did through the unitary plan as well. It was, so it's not there yet. It's M. M? Oh, but it's not up there. Sorry, it happened through a discussion earlier around an answer to someone that yes, we could put in a submission to improve and apparently it needed a recommendation. I thought it was automatic, but it's not. Can we please show it on the screen?
Yes, it's coming.
Oh, sorry. It's a new system and I am being
Sorry, we only
impatient.
just got it a few minutes ago.
All good. It's there, down the bottom. It's just basically saying that we can do a submission to the process. Cool, thank you. Now back to, I opened and now everyone has an opportunity to speak.
No, Councillor Newman had reserved his.
Councillor Newman, I think you wanted to speak, sorry.
No, not necessarily, not right now.
Okay. Councillor Lee.
Yet, my community objects to this plan change, and I've touched on the reasons, but essentially what lies at the core of it is the right of Aucklanders, Auckland ratepayers, to the peaceful enjoyment of their homes and properties. And by proceeding with this plan change for the people in my electorate, that peaceful enjoyment is being put under threat by the council they pay for. Special character areas are to be reduced by nearly 25% in this plan, given the status quo in the unitary plan, which is a significant loss of our built heritage. That means that it's not just the heritage that is destroyed, but the security and the well-being of people who currently live in those old homes, knowing that at any time a property developer could come along and put up a 15-storey tower that could block their light or their view, or perhaps both. I was reading the other night about the Byzantine Emperor Theophilus in the year around 800 AD in Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire. And the emperor was processing from one end of Constantinople to the other, as he did every week, and he was stopped by an elderly widow who complained to the emperor that his own relation, I think it was his brother-in-law, was expanding his palace, so much so to block all her light. And the emperor responded by having his brother-in-law tear down the palace. And I think we should take an example from that. There have been a number of reasons why our advisors, expert advisors, now want to dispense with Plan Change 78, which they've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on, and other people, including people in my constituency. They want to dispense with that and replace it with this plan. Natural hazards has been something we've heard a lot of just recently, but before that, we had the message from the Minister about sustainability doesn't count anymore, sustainable management. It's property rights that count. But as things have unfolded, we're hearing less about property rights for obvious reasons. And then we heard in the workshops a pitch about productivity. This is going to help productivity. But coming from an organisation, with all due respect, like Auckland Council and Auckland Transport and the CRL, productivity and the roads being dug up for months or years at a time, productivity doesn't sort of ring that well either. And of course, we don't hear anything at all, hardly a thing about affordability. And of course, you couldn't really pitch an affordability message to luxury high-rise on the northern slopes overlooking the harbour. It wasn't so long ago, members, that we came under a lot of pressure from private interests and even the Mayor to remove the ports of Auckland and let's have high-rise buildings down there. Now, that was not feasible for a number of reasons and it went away. So now the luxury high-rise has now appeared on the heights of Parnell and St Mary's Bay. And so that's why we probably don't hear so much passion about all of this deregulation is about affordability. Of course, it's not. Now, the fundamental flaw in the whole plan, apart from the undue haste, indecent haste, is the 2 million extra consented dwellings. And that figure, no matter how often you ask for the reasons, cannot be explained. And therein lies the problem. Because if it can't be explained, one has to consider why is it still there? Why are intelligent professional people still trying to justify it? And I have to give my own interpretation. 2 million extra dwellings is a deregulation measure to deregulate the property market, not to achieve affordability, but to give the vested interest, the property developers, the maximum scope to pick and choose the best parts of Auckland for them to make money and to hell with the consequences for the Aucklanders who live in those areas. And that's why I have to oppose this plan for them, but also for the reputation of this council. This will be something which will not be looked back with any sense of pride whatsoever. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Turner. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. I still just struggle with the word planning, and you know, in looking through all this stuff the other day and talking to people, I came across the new CRL timetables when the train gets going, and in West Auckland it is terrible. The train is not going to go to Grafton, it's not going to go to the hospital. Everybody from West Auckland is going to have to go to the city, as far as I read all the timetables, and then change trains. And yet here I see the biggest green blobs for uprise around the Henderson train station. Again, I've listened to everybody. I thank everybody for your inputs and all the staff, and I sit here flip-flopping backwards and forwards, but at the bottom of the day, I'm just trying to make sense out of what I'm seeing here. I don't have faith that that what we say yes to here actually ends up in sensible outcomes in the community. It's more often than not been that way in my lifetime. So I'm still a little undecided if someone else speaks, but I'm not happy with this plan, as I said in the beginning. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
I'm a bit gutted that for our largest city in New Zealand, we don't want to get the parameters right. I feel, given all of the pain that Auckland's been through in recent times, and I am so full of regret that I didn't fight more viciously over Plan Change 78. Some of you weren't around at that time, but for those of us who tried to put up some questions around the issues that have subsequently come to pass, we were ridiculed. We were told people are sleeping in cars, just get on with it, you know, where's your courage, da-da-da-da-da. And a stitch in time saves 9. So I'm not wanting to rub your noses in the fact that you chose not to think about natural hazards back in August 22. I just want to learn from that history that we have a responsibility to try and get it right. And to that end, I think we've got to learn from the mistakes of the past. We didn't push back hard enough. Where was our leadership at that time, and where is our leadership now? We haven't been a good negotiator on that. If we had been a better negotiator, we probably would have had discussions with the Minister around sequencing growth. There might have been better outcomes. It isn't a question of growth versus no growth. We're all wanting to support growth, and I think the majority of us sitting around this table want to see that intensification. As somebody who's been at the forefront of pushing for the CRL, it's always been intended that we had greater intensification in and around those stations. So this isn't surprise, surprise, surprise. We've always known that, but we assumed common sense would mean we'd be having good discussions with the government of the day and making sure that we allowed for growth in a sensible, sequenced way. The elephant in the room continues to be this 2 million. And I, for the life of me, cannot understand why there is nothing on the public record, nothing in writing about this council in this term, this year, pushing back on that. I feel really despondent for Auckland. The choice is really simple. You know, it didn't take, it just required us to take a little more time, and to be calling taking time to get a plan right dithering, I find really offensive in actual fact. But approve this flawed plan today and own the consequences. I would have asked you to have the courage to demand better.
Councillor Watson. Oh, sorry, I need to do an extension of time. I'll move. Councillor Walker will second. All those in favour? Any opposed? Cool, thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yep, thanks. I'll try and be brief here. At the start of the Super City, there were a number of commentators, such as people like Peter McShane, who talked about the potential for the new entity, for the new council to actually challenge the government. That was the phraseology at the time, that this new superstructure might in fact be a rival to the government. They didn't have really worried, had they? And I think today's really showing that very graphically. And in fact, our own report writers say that. If we go to our own agenda, point 18, successive governments have chosen to directly intervene in council's planning role through legislation and national policy statements. The MDRS was a bipartisan requirement that came into force without warning for impacted councils. It is expected that this intervention by governments will continue into the future. This appears to be a new political norm. Well, that's a new political norm that we have reinforced, bolstered, contributed to today. They're going to keep doing it, and our significance will accordingly wane. It's very clear today, you know, we're adopting the least worst option. Our own officers have said that. I wrote it down, some of the comments from some of our senior planners. This outcome is suboptimal. It's not the plan change we would choose to advance. We know that. So, great. That's what we're going out to the people of Auckland with. That and massive upswing in intensification and, just, a plan is a little bit of a misnomer really, because this intensification is just going to peppercorn across. There's going to be a bit here, a bit there, a bit there, a bit in the next place. And some of the parts in my ward, the new zoning's jumping a zone. So it's not just going up one zone, it's going from single house site to mixed housing urban. Nearly the majority of Whangaparāoa Peninsula has got that. It used to be single site. So the consequences on the ground once this rolls out, and we've seen it already in parts of our ward, they're going to be devastating for the communities. And this time of year, a lot of us are out walking around, and what struck me as I've been walking around the road is actually how much the planning was better under the legacy councils. You could see an amenity, you could see some thought into the wider living space, and this is in areas where there was intensification. I look in places like Millwater, Long Bay, Albany, that must have been largely the legacy North Shore Council. There was some thought into the planning rather than just this cram it in, rack up the intensification, as if that's a substitute for sound policy. That if we're talking about affordability and all the commentary that we heard today, we'd never had anything said about the home ownership rate. Isn't this all meant to be about the home ownership rate? Isn't that meant to be a fundamental part of living in New Zealand? Is what used to be able to own your own home. The home ownership rate over succeeding decades has plummeted in Auckland from 75% in the 70s and 80s down to about 59% now. The unitary plan, I remember in 2016 sitting here and seeing the impassioned pleas of people about providing housing for young people and how apartments would open things up. And so the home ownership rate hasn't improved. It hasn't improved, and it won't improve under this too, particularly in those areas that are desirable and even in areas not so desirable, where one house in our ward, one house of 1.4 million gets bowled, and you get 3, 4, 5, 8 houses of 1.2 or 1.3. There's no benefit to those near half of Aucklanders who are shut out of home ownership. If it was transforming that figure, I'd even go along with it, but I know it's not. So instead, we've got this planning mishmash imposed on us from Wellington, and our response is just to go along with it. To just go along with it. There's been no resistance. There's been the old chestnut rolled out there of this is what we have to do. We can't do anything about it. Well, if that's the case, we might as well go to Mr. Bishop and say, take over the planning of Auckland, because you're doing it anyway. At least then you might escape the political accountability of it. So next time I'm down in Eastbourne, I'll get that day's Bay ferry across, and I'll see if I can jack up a meeting with Mr. Bishop and tell him that.
Kia ora, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. As one of the key Aucklanders that took Auckland through the terrible events of 2023, I want to do everything in my power to be able to downzone in areas that we know that are high risk of flooding. If it has been 971 days, Chair, and I'll take your maths as right on that one, we've taken 972 days too long to get to where we are. So I'm against Plan Change 78, majorly for its inability to be downzoned in high-risk flooding areas. But I'm also against Plan Change 78 because of its mass across-the-board intensification. And I know that my local MP, Brooke Van Velden, has been to constituents in my ward that are very upset that properties are right boundary to boundary being built so close you could almost shake hands with your neighbour. So that I want you to be very clear that my my vote today is rejecting Plan Change 78. But I believe that we need to prove to the Minister, and I'm taking your word and the Mayor's word on that, that we've got to replace it with something else. Do I like the speed of this? No, I don't. Do I like the timing of it? No, I don't. Do I think the theory is right to intensify around major transport routes, including the CRL? Yes, I do. But do I think we have it right with the plan that we're replacing? No, I don't. But what I do want is to give Aucklanders as much time as possible to have their say. I want them to understand what the government direction is. I want them to see the draft plan and have their say for their street, their suburb, their local board area, their ward, and their city. Now, we've had a bit of a success. We've had a longer period, almost 7 weeks, November 3 to 19, for that submission process to start. Then we'll have, inside that time, we'll have new local boards sworn in, and they will strongly be involved in the process going forward. And I covered that in my question, so I won't repeat myself. But at the end of the day, I think we will come back after the hearings with an opportunity to accept or reject what the commissioners say. So we will be in charge. And I want to make sure we remain in charge of this planning destiny. And in conclusion, I will just say one more time, do I think we've got it right now? No, I don't. But I do want Aucklanders to stand up, have their say, and let's listen to them first. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair. And firstly, want to acknowledge yourself, Councillor Dalton and staff. Thank you so much for working so hard on this and at a really difficult time in the term. I'm going to support this today because I'm happier with the direction that this is taking us. And I think it does move the city forward in several key ways, but I'm also reminded of the old saying that the perfect is the enemy of the good. I have real reservations about special character area, and I'll touch upon that a bit later, but I hugely support stopping building in floodplains. I strongly support more housing along rapid transit for a more connected city. And I'll just say this plan change does allow more sustainable planning in West Auckland, where there's bugger all intensification to take more growth. And if you vote against this, I would advise you voting against something downzoning in places like Te Aratu and Glen Eden. Those people will not thank you, I'll tell you that. As part of today, I was asked why now. Well, like many of my colleagues, I've dealt with the flood-affected residents on the ground over this term, still do. There are people that have lost their homes. There are people that can't sleep when it rains. This is a message to them that we cannot turn back the clock. All we can do is try and help now. All we can do is promise as much as possible that the mistakes of the past that have been building up over decades won't happen again. If you vote against this, you risk continuation of building housing in floodplains, causing insult to present Aucklanders and injury to future ones. I need to talk about affordability because that's come up and some people have said, contrary to Year 9 economic understanding, that adding supply doesn't affect house prices. Come on. Since just 2005, average house prices in the city have gone from 5.8 times income to 7.8 times income. We've been advised clearly that allowing more homes has the effect of stabilising house prices and in some cases reducing them and making homes more affordable for Aucklanders, and that is our duty to do that. We've had evidence today of demand where it's highest in Central Isthmus. Brought the map up, remember that one, guys. We've had evidence that the very best land in the city for existing wastewater and stormwater infrastructure is in the Central Isthmus. We've been told that too. People want to live near their jobs, near their study, near rapid public transport, and our city infrastructure can take it. We've been advised of all of this. We've heard how important it is to do this to lower carbon emissions as well. So what's distorting that? Clear market signal? It's the same old politics as usual. When we allow more homes in the best areas for them, everybody along the housing spectrum benefits. Homeowners, existing ones, get a stable market and strong communities. First home buyers get a fairer chance to own a place. Because they've moved on, because they can buy, renters get more choice and lower rents. For those struggling to get into housing at all, they benefit from the lower rents and maybe they can get a roof over their head. We have a huge problem in this city. More homes means less pressure, fairer prices, and stronger neighbourhoods for all of us. I want to talk about special character. Now, I'm surprised about the discussion here because 72% of the Auckland Unitary Plan levels will still be retained. 3/4 still retained. Not only that, but we've been advised the tests are now easier to protect SCA outside walkable catchment than it was before. Plenty of people are happy about that, and I acknowledge that and respect that opinion. I disagree with it, but I acknowledge and respect that opinion because special character protections don't protect heritage. Don't forget that. Heritage buildings are already protected by law, completely different regime. The category is a council invention. It sets up wealthy areas of the central city and places like that to operate as gated communities. That's what it does. The choice here I need to acknowledge is not AUP. It's PC 78 versus the new one. And we're talking about 700 or so areas removed, pretty much all walkable catchments from train stations. So are we serious about our multi-billion-dollar investment into CRL or not? If we're of the mind to ask the Minister to take swings at different parts of this, what I would ask the Minister is to look at special character areas, because the future Auckland families would thank us for that. Just wrapping up now. Record numbers of New Zealanders left last year. 73,000, nearly 1,500 every week. They don't see a future in this city. It is our responsibility and our duty to provide hope and opportunities for people and families so they stay. It starts with the ability to set down roots in places where people actually want to live. Places that are best served for jobs, best served for study, best served for public transport. Special character areas suppress that demand, contributing to higher house prices. It's our job and our duty to make the city an exciting and vibrant place to live, and I'll wrap this up with a quote here about this. Been reading Abundance by Ezra Klein. It's a fantastic book. I want to quote this because it's really cool. Cities are engines of creativity because we create in community. We are spurred by competition. We need to find the colleagues and the friends and the competitors and the antagonists who unlock our genius and add their own. That's the kind of city I want to live in. We should go to the Minister with our vision and our positive ambition for the city, not the same old negative politics as usual. Thank you, Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Leone.
Not sure how I'm going to follow that one. It was pretty impressive. Yeah. Look, I just want to start off by saying intensification, we know, is one of the most important issues facing our city. And as leaders, we have to ask the hard questions to ensure we get the best advocacy points across for our city. While I support intensification and I do want affordable housing in our city, homes close to transport hubs and more compact city means fewer commutes, less reliance on cars, and to reduce carbon emissions. We have to ensure we are also highlighting concerns, and that is why I raised the option around staged approach. The concerns raised by Aucklanders, and I can say this based on community meetings I have been to, not because I'm anti-intensification, but because I believe it is important to listen to everyone's concerns. These concerns include the fact central government do want us to house more people without providing resources in terms of more schools and other amenities to cope with the intensification. There is intensification happening in parts of our city and schools are already full. I do support building up rather than sprawl for our city, but we need to match those resources. My concerns were raised earlier. Central government should be providing a clear 20-year plan on how they will build more schools, which works alongside the intensification plans they are putting forward. If there was an option to make any amendment today, then that's what I would be doing, is how we can have those matching resources. But we know that that's not possible, so I just wanted to raise that. I'd also be focused on how central government can address the 23,000 vacant homes we have in Auckland. We can't control that at our level again, but it does need to be highlighted because we have huge rates of homelessness in Auckland, and we know that that is rising. We need to have a plan around that alongside these plans that are being raised. If we're building more homes and those homes are actually going to be lived in, then that's a good step forward for our city and accessible to transport. We need hope for our city, but we also need to call out other areas that haven't been addressed. I've also been concerned about building homes in the floodplain, so I'm really glad to hear that is being addressed. And going forward, we need to just press on with the consultation for our city. So I will support this going through today and hearing the robust feedback from Aucklanders.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, firstly, can I just pay compliments to the previous speaker, Councillor Leone, who yesterday spent time at Maranga Whānau in Homai in my ward with Phyllis Latu. And I mean, Councillor Leone and I might not necessarily agree on all issues, but I do think she has a real sense of empathy and heart for those people who are off sleepers, who do need to transition to permanent housing options, and I thank her for her visit. Chair, I intend to vote for this, not because I think that the proposed replacement is good, but because the withdrawal from Plan Change 78 is so desperately, urgently needed. And saying that, I do think there are some improvements. Certainly, I do prefer an alignment with residential development in relation to the stations and the city centre. I think that's actually sensible, but there are some issues here that I do think need to be highlighted. It talks about a lot of the rhetoric's talking about increasing housing supply so as to contribute to greater level of affordability. That is not new. That is the whole purpose of the Special Housing Areas Act 2013. And of course, the SHAs that were proposed, I would suggest that was not a particularly successful mechanism to achieve the increased supply of housing so as to address affordability. Some of my constituents would look at that and say that was about landowner lotto, land developer lotto, and I think what we've seen in recent times is a significant expansion of the playing field for developers to look at where they want to develop next. But unfortunately, and it does need to be said, that I can't foresee any significant improvement in the supply of affordable housing. There will be a increased supply of unaffordable housing, but Auckland's already got quite a large supply of dwellings out there, new dwellings. I think some of them are quite nice, some of them are bloody ugly, but they are not affordable for a lot of people. And that is because ultimately this is about supply side, whereas incomes haven't kept pace with the increase in price, even if the market is softer at the moment. I do want to say, Chair, that I really worry about what the future may hold if Kāinga Ora is once again empowered in the future to become a substantial land developer, where they might go with these permissive planning powers, where Kāinga Ora might look to develop in the future. I hope that Kāinga Ora will be a social housing provider, not a land developer, but I worry about that because I think that what we have here is planning rules for developers who are not going to develop today. They will bank these permissive rules and they'll look at their investment opportunities in the future. Chair, just in conclusion, I want to say this, that I think that you will see a series of subsequent plan changes that will be required in the future, because what we will face is a real disconnect between areas where there's perceived capacity and the reality that infrastructure doesn't actually provide for it. And I think that if you think that this is the last time that we'll come to the planning debates, or the government, because the government seems to have all the power now, that's not the case. There will be subsequent plan changes, because I have no doubt that what we will have coming up is no great improvement to the Auckland Unitary Plan. You could say it was the worst plan, actually. But there is, in my view, a lesser alignment between infrastructure and where developers want to go. And as Megan and others have pointed out, this doesn't prevent the Greenfields private plan change requests that come through. In saying that, Chair, I do want to withdraw from Plan Change 78, so if this is the only mechanism to do so, I'm going to vote for it. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
Sure, so we may not have much choice here, But my real concern is, frankly, the gutless nature of this council that I see, and I'm talking about the council as a whole. We're not pushing back against the government. We're not advocating sufficiently for Aucklanders. So I see a situation where underlying land values are going to go up, a circumstance where we're going to have more pepper pot development, more cars on the streets, a lower quality of the overall housing stock, neighbourhoods that are less pleasant to live in, and more people getting out of Auckland because it's becoming a less pleasant place to live. That is a blunt reality. And this doesn't solve it. As far as flooding is concerned, flooding is a function of the land that's in the bottom that floods, but it's also a function of the catchment. And we're intensifying the overall catchments. And I harp on about this again and again and again. And consistently, I've held the line on that. So we're going to be worse off in terms of flooding. All you've got to do is go around the streets and see the new places that are being developed and put two and two together and see what's happening. And see the sediment that's running off those properties too as they're developing. We don't have the financing tools in place, so this will continue to rack up our debt because the underlying problem with our debt is the development contributions are not sufficient to cover the cost of growth. We don't have that in place yet again. So we have a government that's just taking an ad hoc approach when we actually have some breathing space right now to get things right. We're not getting things right. We're going to make more of a mess of things, and it'll be even more difficult to pull it back. So this is fundamentally unfair for Aucklanders. We should be pushing back on the 2 million and pushing back hard. We should be advocating for more time, as Christine Fletcher advocated, to get Aucklanders behind us. The government is vulnerable if Auckland stands up to them. But our leadership is gutless, in my view, and that needs to change. So I'm pretty upset around the place we're in now, and I would hope that with a new council, hopefully with more councillors prepared to stand up for Auckland, we can make a change.
Councillor Williamson, thank you.